Hello and welcome to The Quest for the Best, a show where I talk about stuff I've been watching lately, good or bad. In this video I'm going to be talking about Artemis Fowl, Scoob, Capone, Crazy World, and Trolls World Tour. Check the timecodes if you want to jump around to anything in particular. As I predicted, the last one of these I made was claimed for using a trailer, so thankfully this video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. I've always been someone who has been a bit paranoid about internet security ever since getting a few subs on YouTube, so a VPN has been an essential tool to protect my internet connection using the highest standards of encryption currently available. ExpressVPN can even be used to get unrestricted access to all parts of the internet. This includes choosing your server location of choice, so if you want to see what the Greeks are watching on Netflix, you have the freedom to see for yourself. You don't have to worry about this negatively affecting your internet speed either. They're called ExpressVPN for a reason. Shop online with peace of mind, securely stream or download content from anywhere, anytime. And this is for less than $7 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Take back your internet privacy today and find out how you can get 3 months free of ExpressVPN by clicking the link in the description. That's expressvpn.com/IHE. Artemis Fowl is Disney's new... what is this? What is this? Artemis Fowl is Disney's latest attempt at establishing a new fantasy property based on a book, with the hope of making a whole franchise, I'm sure. Every Artemis Fowl book, let's make movies on those. Well, please don't if anything like this one, because this was painful. This was actually so miserable. This was an awful film. The first 30 odd minutes I was just bored. Not baffled, not surprised in any way, just bored out of my mind. And then it reaches a point, maybe around the point where Josh Gad's mouth starts stretching wildly and he digs in the ground and poops out sand and it swallows big MacGuffins and all this wacky stuff's going on. I really do not like a single thing about this movie. I don't think there's anything quality, honestly. From a top level, the story is based on a book of the same name. It's about this 12-year-old kid who learns that fantasy stuff is actually real. So fairies are real, trolls are real, dwarves are real, you know. And he's got to go on a quest to save his dad, who's been kidnapped because he's a master criminal. And the main character's journey is to go from being a smug little 12-year-old who doesn't know that fantasy stuff is real into a smug 12-year-old who does know that dwarves and fairies are real, but he's also a criminal mastermind as well. He literally says the words, "I'm a criminal mastermind." I'm convinced that Kenneth Branagh, the director, who did Thor, or you might know him from El Dorado as the blonde one, I don't think he understands how humans that aren't really posh talk or interact. It would at least explain some of the horrible humor where the joke just completely misses, hits in the completely wrong way. It's assembled together in this just rushed mess where there are hardly even scenes. It's just a bunch of bullet points that are clearly moments from the book, but they don't contextualize them at all. So with each new monster or location or sequence or set piece, they're establishing new stuff all the time in a way that just bombards you with random shit. Like, not only is it fantasy, but these fantasy beings, like these fairies, have sci-fi technology. So they have these little like transformer discs that they shoot out from their headquarters that fly all around the world, and they create these pods that pause time so the fairies can go in and, like in Men in Black, when they've got to cover up any scenes where aliens have landed, it's kind of a similar thing, where if like a troll escapes into a human populated area, they've got to go in and clean up the mess. There's this scene where Artemis Fowl first gets confirmation that all this fantasy stuff actually is real and all the stuff he's heard is true, where he first sees a fairy with his own eyes. And just the way it's presented, clearly showing no interest in the wonder or joy of the scene from anyone's perspective. It's just this awkward CG composed in a computer, horrendous nightmare. Josh Gad is this dwarf character who has a condition that makes him really tall, so there's some irony there. And that's something I could imagine being a fun character to explore in a story with a bit of development. I'm sure he's a lot more charming and works more in the book, but here he's this creepy trying to be charming, trying to be Jack Sparrow, Han Solo, kind of roguish, but still a bit heroic kind of character. He frames the whole movie through this like police interview in a prison type setup where he's describing the story of Artemis Fowl. But you can just tell by the way the story is structured that it's not meant to be told this quickly. It rushes past everything. No one gets developed. People just crop up randomly. Like, one of the major characters is just established in a short piece of narration by Josh Gad. And then he's like a mainstay in the cast who's supposed to have this emotional moment. Oh, spoilers, by the way, where he gets crushed at the end by a troll. And at that moment I thought, oh, maybe in the book that's like quite cool. And shows there's some stakes and something to lose in this world. But then moments later they just bring him back. Because fairies are just magic, so they can just do anything they want. There's some of the most embarrassing effects work I've seen in a while. With these fairy characters, you could imagine there's a lot of flying scenes and very quick motion around. And it's really awkward, it comes across really cheap. The way the camera just zips around when the fairies are completely CG in this weightless way makes your brain recognize that everything is just fake BS. And really, none of the effects works to establish a world or build a story up. And they have the balls to sequel bait at the end for a good 10 minutes, as if this is going to get a sequel. It just annoys me when they take these books that people care about and then they just shit all over them because they choose the wrong people to make it. I'm not saying just sub Kenneth Branagh out with someone else, but it does show when you put people who really care about it at the helm. And this seems like hey Kenneth, we've got this book. We have the rights to this book that we bought ages ago. Do you want to make a movie on it? Might wind up on Disney Plus though. And he was like, oh yeah, goody. Probably didn't even read it. I'm joking. I hope he read it. But yeah, every character's the same at the end as they were at the beginning. The dialogue is awful, the film is ugly, the scene construction is abysmal, there's just no moments, no momentum, no energy, piss poor world building, bad special effects. It really is the whole gambit of terrible. Everything, every bad thing it could be, it is. And for that I'm giving it a half star. I really think this movie sucks. How is Scoob in the gang when they're modernized? Quite annoying, actually. So I guess this is the latest Scooby-Doo movie. It's fully animated this time, no more live-action antics of James Gunn, although I would much rather another one of those than this. That's about the origin of Scooby-Doo, how he gets named Scooby-Doo and meets Shaggy, and also there has to be a superhero element because, you know, superhero movies. So a very irritating Mark Wahlberg and Ken Jeong fit into this weird mystery. First off, we're going to mention the voice actors and how they just have nothing on the originals or the James Gunn movies I just referenced. I don't really care about Daphne, Velma and Fred that much, but it's Shaggy that really is bothering in this movie. It just doesn't sound right. It's just a little bit off. And that is what Scooby-Doo is. It's Shaggy and Scoob. And I gotta admit, there's some pretty good, Shaggy Scoob moments in there every now and again, like classic moments, which us Scooby-Doo fans want to see. But every time Shaggy opens his mouth, it's like, that's not Shaggy. That's not Shaggy. That's not Shaggy. You got Scooby-Doo. You got the Scooby-Doo guy back. Why can't you get Shaggy back? He's just as important. Clearly not to you guys. Thing is, I feel like there is something deep within this movie that could have been massaged into something a little more interesting. Everything with the superheroes, that is just so played out by now. Oh, it turns out Scooby-Doo's the chosen one, so he's got to become a superhero. So then there's some forced conflict with Shaggy, so they stop being friends for a little minute in the middle before they make up again. This movie was mocked a little bit for having Simon Cowell in it, as if this came out in 2004. And it is probably the worst joke in the whole movie, the whole Simon Cowell thing. And it's not just in it once, it's like a recurring joke, which reminded me of every now and again comedies have jokes like that just sneak in that are aged before the films even come out, like Deadpool 2 and the dubstep joke. There's kind of this mockumentary style, which I think they implemented because it's quite a cheap looking movie. So what they tend to do is have the characters in the foreground with some really bland background that's blurred out, and then they fake a handheld camera movement to just trick you into thinking that it's more cinematic than it is. The storyboarding is noticeably weak. The art style is just a bit off. It's almost not stylized enough. There's too much realism to it. And speaking of Deadpool, actually they tried to go for this self-aware meta kind of tone with some of the humor. And there are a couple of okay jokes, but the majority of them are awful. The kind of stuff you'd expect, like Netflix jokes, things to do with social media. But stop putting filters on your selfies. Stupid stuff like that. And a weird amount of action for a Scooby-Doo movie. I'm not talking about just silly chases. I'm talking about like just genuine Marvel movie action scenes with these superhero characters. That was the least interesting part of this to me. The only thing I will defend is, and I don't know if this is spoilers, but again, like, do you really care about Scoob spoilers? Really? But the villain is Dick Dastardly and Muttley, which I was pleasantly surprised by. I thought that was something unexpected, which could have been way funnier if they like expanded it a bit and didn't have all this superhero shit going on. Because he has this like stupid backstory. I don't know what I really want from a contemporary Scooby-Doo movie, but it's not this. I just can't stand it when these property movies, based on things we've seen countless times, we know how to do Scooby-Doo correctly. Like, Jesus Christ, it is Scooby-Doo. Why you gotta treat this like you're Lord and Miller? You're not Lord and Miller. There's no comedic integrity when half of the jokes are just punchlines you can find on Facebook. The music as well, in particular, that's a big sign of how pandering this kind of stuff is. Just super basic, obvious choices. Any movie that focuses this hard on social media appeal always sucks. Always. Yeah, it was quite a slog getting through this one. 1.5 stars. Right, Capone. Josh Trank's latest movie. Since Fan 4-Stick, I'm actually surprised that this was even able to be made based on the fallout from that movie, but Capone with Tom Hardy playing the titular role, presenting the final moments of his life, his dementia-riddled life, where his past is coming back to haunt him through his own brain betraying him. Now, on paper, this is something that should really be interesting to me. I like introspective character studies. Most of the film is in one location, about one character mostly, in a slow spiral into the horrors that is dementia. But there is something clumsy about it that doesn't come together. I appreciate the idea and where it's coming from because I haven't really seen something like this before. It's a unique angle to take. We've seen lots of stories about gangsters meeting their end, but specifically the way this entire movie is not about action, it's not about glorifying anything to do with the crime life. If anything, it's the opposite. It's kind of mocking the guy and making this point that what good was any of it if in the end you're just going to be shitting yourself in your bed and losing your mind. I'm kind of split on Tom Hardy's performance because I'm not sure whether to blame him or just the direction and editing, because he's giving a very Tom Hardy performance. It's all very like voicey, like it's hard to tell what he says sometimes. It's very guttural. He's playing someone who's dying, so I guess in that sense he does do a good job. And with the makeup and everything, he's suitably kind of gross. They dress him down and make him look as disgusting as possible to you. Maybe it'd be a great performance if he was playing the Penguin or something. But this film is 100 minutes long. How does that fill up a whole movie? Well, I guess that's the problem, is there isn't really enough substance to keep it interesting. I would argue that the film doesn't really get going until a good hour and 20 minutes in, where there's some kind of trippy scenes where he's losing his mind slowly. It's a lot more humorous than I was expecting, lots of jokes in there, including a couple shit jokes. And it's not all a loss. Some of the humor is actually pretty funny, but it is just really clearly missing the mark. I couldn't really tell what was supposed to be funny intentionally and what wasn't. A lot of Tom Hardy's mannerisms and the way it was edited came across as being very silly sometimes. To be honest, I could see this working better as a short, I think. Or you'd really need someone with a distinct visual way of presenting a story like this. Maybe someone who can get weird with it, like David Lynch, or someone who's willing to delve a bit more into the conceptual side of exploring someone's gradual mental health decline. None of it really feels like it matters or has much consequence. It feels like a lot of disparate ideas, which are admittedly quite clever on paper in ways, but there is just something lacking from the script, a sense of urgency or punchier dialogue that keeps you going, or some kind of dynamic beyond Tom Hardy just grunting. It's a good example of a movie I don't really feel passionately about either way, but I have a certain level of underlying respect for, just because I think the slant is kind of ambitious, and it takes guts to try and present a story in a new and fresh way, and you have to take the risk sometimes, and yeah, sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's just mediocre, unintentionally funny at points, but overall I'd say don't bother rushing out to see this unless you're particularly interested in the subject matter. Crazy World is an awesome Wakaliwood action movie. You might recognize the names from Who Killed Captain Alex, which is my personal favorite thing they've done, and I've made a video on before. But I watched this because the TIFF YouTube channel uploaded the movie for free for a time, so I was able to check out the mastery. Talking about these films is interesting because they are just on a completely other level. They don't exist in the same framework as anything else, they just are their own thing. And what really carries them is this incredibly genuine and humble sense of humor, where it's these people just telling stories and presenting this awesome action just because they love it and they just want to entertain people. They truly want to entertain people. They're entertainers at heart, and it really shows. I think overall the storytelling and the presentation is a significant improvement. He's really growing and trying out different things. The camera quality's better. There are some really fun characters, like there's this guy who's like covered in rubbish and uses it to blend into the scenery and action sequences, and he's crazy, so he laughs at everything all the time. And these are ideas that are followed through and implemented on, and they're given like sad backstories that come out of nowhere that are really fun. And they've built this whole universe now where they have characters like Bruce Yu who shows up and saves the day. And I won't show it on screen because YouTube's weird about things with kids in now, but this one has the whole kid angle, which is pretty adorable. And they all do these crazy stunts that with clearly no health and safety. They're just picking each other up, just being crazy. But I do recommend watching anything of theirs you can get a hold of. Maybe get together with a couple friends. Well, I guess it'd have to be on Discord at the moment, unless quarantine's down where you are. But they're awesome to watch with people, a lot of fun. Really sincere, incredibly likable. Wacky special effects, so many good jokes. VJ Emmy is back and he is better than ever. Some of his quotes are just mwah. And it's only an hour long, an hour and 10 minutes. So it just flies by. It's a perfect little package. This is a 5-star from me. Go to their store, buy stuff, support them so they keep making more crazy things. Right, let's end on Trolls World Tour then. So I gotta admit, I didn't really like the first Trolls movie. Thought it was really annoying, actually. Obviously not my kind of thing. I quite like the Yoshi's Woolly World sort of aesthetic of it, where it all looks like it's made out of arts and crafts. That is one thing I haven't really seen before in a movie of this scale and budget. And to be honest, I think the art direction's actually crazy good in the movie. I have a problem with some of the character designs, like I don't really like a lot of the main characters, but there are some really creative and fun designs for a lot of the side stuff and the mise-en-scene and filler. There's some really funny stuff. And there is actually a lot of good humor in the movie, that when it's absurdist and silly, it stays the funniest. Like there's this weird creature that yearns for death and just wants to die, but it just will not happen. But this one, this is definitely better than the first movie. I think they take the ideas of these trolls that live in this musical society and they apply a metaphor to it that works fairly well. It's not subtle or anything, but the diversity metaphor using music as the subject matter is actually pretty good, with the point being that it doesn't matter what music you listen to because it's cool to be different and like different things and embrace the differences in each other. Like obviously this is aimed at pretty young kids, so I'm not going to hold its lack of subtlety against it. But to be honest, there are a couple of surprises in there. Like it coasts along for a while and you kind of think you have it sussed out, but then there's this musical number where the funk trolls just lay down some truths and pop off these just incredible bars. And I was nodding my head and I was tapping my toes and moving along to the beat, and I couldn't help but kind of go along with the movie for a little minute. Because rather simply, the main character is over-enthusiastic and loves everyone and is kind of naive in that way. And the villain of the movie is this played out rocker troll character. And the contrast is good. The way they come together at the end, it works out. The story has some integrity at least. The fact they went the lengths they did to establish this Lord of the Rings style trolls universe with all the different races and visual styles of everything. I thought that was fairly well done, surprisingly well done for what we're talking about here. But what does weigh it down is the same kind of stuff that weighs down Scoob and a lot of other shitty animated movies aimed at children, is that so much of the humor is really bad, really bottom of the barrel obvious. You know, like James Corden plays a character, for example, who I don't know why people keep putting him in movies, but he's tolerable. He has some bad lines, but he doesn't ruin the whole movie for me. It seems clear to me that the artists were just kind of given a bit of freedom to show off these worlds in the wackiest way they can think of. There's some real strange humor in there, like there's a bizarre joke where characters start like rubbing each other's eyes, like actually rubbing on their eyeballs and stuff like that. And there's a nice little vor bit, like a bit of vor in my Trolls movies. Honestly, if you think I'm crazy for praising this at all, and you've like just turned this on to try and watch it, the beginning is like next level terrible. I'll say that. There is something quite embarrassing about using songs like One More Time and then having these like characters dance to it. But you know what, at the very least, they do use the music for storytelling purposes. Most of the time. As annoying and pandering and broad as it can be, at least in this one they acknowledge the fact that a lot of people hate pop music. It's like actually a big part of the story. The surprising amount of commentary on the music industry was nice to get from this movie. There is a fair amount for people who are a bit older, so if you had to watch this with your kid, you wouldn't necessarily want to end it all. One of my least favorite aspects of the story is the expected and obvious conflict the main two characters have, where they just fall out over some trivial nonsense. Justin Timberlake gets friend-zoned and becomes an incel. Weirdly enough, most of the music scenes are actually the worst scenes in the movie. The most obvious stuff, you know, like your One More Times, like there's a sequence where they try and fit as many pop songs as they can in one single song, which is quite horrific. But as I say, there is that one that is weirdly good. I can't figure out if it's because my expectations were just so low for this that I've just gone in looking for things to appreciate about it, or if it genuinely is better than it looks. It's a shame some of the obvious stuff is in there, because it seems like you've already gone the extra mile in some ways. If you just trimmed some of the crap out, this could have been like genuinely good. But it almost feels like they know they're making a Trolls movie, so they're just embracing that and everything that comes with the kind of inherent trashiness of it. I don't know, call me a DreamWorks apologist, but I didn't mind this. I can't justify anything more than a 2.5 star for now though. So those are some mostly shit films. I just wanted to get this out so I can go to watching 13 Reasons Why for a bit and still watch a few movies and have something to talk about. So let me know what you think of some of these, if you've seen them. As I say, next up will be the 13 Reasons Why video. Then after that, I want to go back to Search for the Worst and normal IHG videos, so that should be good. I just take so long to make them. Hope you enjoyed my ramblings, even if they are just a complete mess sometimes. It doesn't help that I was recording for literally like 40 minutes and then I stood up to look at the audio and I forgot to press record. I actually forgot to press record. Whatever, none of this matters, I'm rambling. I'll see you next time. Bye!